Doc Holliday possessed a diverse array of identities, encompassing a gambler, wanderer, refined individual, and gunslinger. A close associate of Wyatt Earp, he received an official appointment as a deputy in Tombstone, Arizona, prior to the renowned confrontation at the OK Corral. Doc Holliday's father, Henry Burroughs Holliday, possessed professional expertise as a pharmacist. He actively participated in multiple conflicts, including the Cherokee Indian War and the Mexican-American War, ultimately attaining the rank of major in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. Following his service in the Mexican-American War, he resettled in Griffin, Georgia, accompanied by a young orphan from Mexico named Francisco Hidalgo. On January 8, 1849, Major Holliday married Alice Jane McKay, and their union resulted in the birth of a daughter named Martha Eleonora, tragically lost during infancy. Subsequently, on August 14, 1851, John Henry Doc Holliday entered the world. In 1857, Major Holliday inherited a parcel of land in Valdosta, Georgia, prompting his relocation of Alice, John, and Francisco to Lowndes County. Here, John Henry received his primary education at the Valdosta Institute, engaging in the study of Greek, Latin, and French. Major Holliday rapidly gained prominence within the town's community, assuming the mantle of mayor for 2 terms, fulfilling the role of secretary in the County Agricultural Society, actively participating in the Masonic Lodge, serving as secretary in the Confederate Veterans Camp, and undertaking the responsibility of overseeing local elections as superintendent. At the tender age of 15, John experienced a profound tragedy when his mother succumbed to consumption, which was later known as tuberculosis, on September 16, 1866. This devastating loss deeply impacted the young adolescent. To compound his grief, his father entered into a new marriage a mere 3 months later. The family's esteem standing within their community, coupled with the fact that John's cousin, Robert Holliday, established the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery, likely influenced his choice of profession. In 1870, he enrolled in the prestigious college located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was on March 1, 1872, that he achieved the esteemed title of Doctor of Dental Surgery, alongside 26 other accomplished graduates. Soon after his graduation, Doc Holliday commenced his dental practice by joining Dr. Arthur Ford's office in Atlanta, Georgia. While John Henry possessed education and garnered respect, he was also known for his fiery temperament as a Southern man who would readily resort to wielding a firearm. There is an incident where he came across African-American men swimming in his beloved bathing spot, which greatly outraged him. In response, Doc Holliday fired shots above their heads, provoking one of the men to return fire. Fortunately, no fatalities resulted from this encounter. This occurrence appears to mark the earliest documentation of Doc's fondness for the six-shooter. Shortly after embarking on his dental career, Doc Holliday received a somber diagnosis: tuberculosis, most likely contracted from his mother prior to her demise. Additionally, his adopted Mexican brother, who also fell victim to the disease and ultimately passed away, may have been another source of transmission. Doc sought advice from multiple physicians, who informed him that his remaining time on Earth was limited and suggested that relocating to a drier climate could prolong his life. Responding to this guidance, Doc Holliday packed his belongings in October 1873 and journeyed to Dallas, Texas, which was then the final destination of the railroad. However, according to Bat Masterson's account in 1907, Doc's decision to move was influenced by a previous shooting incident in Georgia. Initially, Doc collaborated with another dentist named Dr. John A. Seeger in Dallas. However, as his body was plagued by bouts of coughing during delicate dental procedures, his dental practice began to decline, compelling Holliday to seek alternative means of livelihood. In the Western frontier, Doc stood out as an exceptionally unique individual, a highly educated and refined man in a place where such qualities were rare. He possessed fluency in Latin, showcased his exceptional piano skills, exuded sartorial elegance, and exemplified the manners of a Southern gentleman. His intellect and aptitude made him a natural talent at gambling, swiftly becoming his primary source of income, both as an active participant and as a poker and faro dealer. Nevertheless, Doc's impending death weighed heavily on him, instilling a sense of melancholy. He turned to heavy drinking, experienced mood swings, and may have become even more inclined to embrace a life without fear of death. Recognizing the perils associated with a gambling career, the frail and debilitated doctor understood the importance of self-defense. With determination, he embarked on practice sessions with a six-shooter and a menacingly long knife, honing his skills in preparation for the dangers that accompanied his chosen path. On January 2, 1875, an initial report emerged detailing a confrontation between Doc and a saloon owner named Austin, escalating swiftly into a violent gunfight. Despite several shots being fired, neither party was wounded, but both individuals were subsequently apprehended. This incident was documented in the Dallas Weekly Herald. Initially, the local population viewed the gunfight as an amusing spectacle. However, their perception changed a few days later when Doc found himself embroiled in another dispute, resulting in the deliberate and precise shooting of a prominent community member with two well-aimed bullets. To evade the pursuit of a posse trailing him, Holliday fled Dallas and made his way to Jacksboro, a turbulent and lawless cowtown located in close proximity to a military outpost. There, Doc secured employment as a faro dealer, armed with a shoulder holster and a hip holster housing his guns, alongside a trusty knife. Possessing exceptional marksmanship skills, he engaged in 3 additional gunfights within a brief span of time. Although these confrontations resulted in the loss of one individual's life, no legal actions were taken against him in the unruly cowtown. However, during the summer of 1876, another disagreement erupted, leading to a fatal encounter where Doc killed a soldier from Fort Richardson. This incident prompted an investigation involving the United States government. A substantial reward was offered for Doc's capture, prompting vigorous pursuit by the Army, Texas Rangers, United States Marshals, local law enforcement, and even ordinary citizens eager to claim the bounty. With the looming threat of execution if apprehended, Doc made a desperate escape to the Apache Territory in Kansas Territory, which is now known as Colorado. Along his journey, passing through Pueblo, Leadville, Georgetown, and Central City, he left 3 additional lifeless bodies in his wake. Eventually settling in Denver, he adopted the alias of Tom McKee, engaging in the game of faro at Babbitt's house. Initially maintaining a relatively low profile, everything changed when he became embroiled in a heated dispute with Bud Ryan, a notorious and formidable gambler. A violent altercation ensued, during which Doc skillfully wielded his deadly knife, nearly decapitating Ryan. Although Ryan survived the encounter, his face and neck were horrifically disfigured. The public's animosity towards Doc compelled him to flee once more, seeking refuge in Wyoming, then New Mexico, and ultimately returning to his native Texas, where his path would cross with Wyatt Earp and Big Nose Kate at Fort Griffin. During the card game at John Shanzy's saloon, Doc encountered Mary Catherine Elder Haroni, a woman known by various aliases but commonly referred to as Big Nose Kate due to her prominent nasal feature. Despite her occupation as a dance hall performer and prostitute, Kate possessed both physical attractiveness and a strong-willed personality. Her tenacity and fiery temperament were on par with Doc's own. She proudly declared her independence, choosing to work in her profession without being tied to any man or establishment. While journeying from Dodge City, Kansas, Wyatt Earp pursued a notorious train robber named Dave Rudabo. Seeking to apprehend the fugitive even beyond state boundaries, Wyatt received a temporary appointment as a United States Deputy Marshal. He tirelessly trailed Rudabo for an extensive distance of 400 miles. Arriving at the town's largest establishment, Shanzy's Saloon, Wyatt inquired about Rudabo's whereabouts. The owner, John Shanzy, informed him that Rudabo had been present earlier in the week, but was unsure of his current destination. Shanzy directed Wyatt to Doc Holliday, who had engaged in a card game with Rudabo. Wyatt approached the idea of conversing with Holliday with doubt, considering Doc's well-known animosity towards law enforcement. However, upon locating him at Shanzy's that evening, Wyatt was taken aback by Holliday's unexpected openness to engage in conversation. Doc conveyed to Wyatt his belief that Rudabo had retraced his steps to Kansas. Eager to share this vital information, Wyatt promptly telegraphed Bat Masterson, the sheriff in Dodge City, and as a result, Rutabo was successfully apprehended. This unlikely encounter at Shansi's forged a lasting friendship between the two. In 1877, Doc found himself dealing cards to a local bully named Ed Bailey, who was accustomed to getting his way without opposition. Unimpressed by Doc's reputation, Bailey intentionally disregarded the rules of Western poker by repeatedly examining the discarded cards. Such an act was strictly prohibited and could result in the forfeiture of the pot. Despite Holliday's 2 warnings, Bailey stubbornly persisted, once again reaching for the discards. At that moment, without uttering a single word or revealing his hand, Doc swiftly collected the entire pot. Bailey, infuriated, reached for his concealed pistol beneath the table. However, before he could pull the trigger, Doc's lethal knife sliced through the man's abdomen, leaving him sprawled across the table amidst a pool of blood. Aware that his actions were rooted in self-defense, Doc chose not to flee. Nevertheless, due to the absence of a proper jail, he found himself confined to a local hotel room. Regardless of Bailey's character, a vengeful mob formed, determined to seek retribution against Holliday. Recognizing that the mob would swiftly overpower the local lawman, Big Nose Kate devised a plan to liberate Doc from his confinement. Initiating a fire in an old shed, the flames rapidly spread, threatening to engulf the entire town. As the townsfolk focused their efforts on combating the blaze, Big Nose Kate, wielding a pistol in each hand, confronted the guard stationed outside Holliday's room. Disarming the guard, she facilitated their escape. Under the cover of darkness, they sought refuge in Dodge City, riding stolen horses as the sun rose. Assuming the identities of Dr. and Mrs. John Henry Holliday, they registered at Deacon Cox's boarding house. Doc was immensely grateful for Kate's support and resolved to bring her happiness, forsaking gambling and returning to his medical practice. In return, Kate pledged to abandon her former life as a prostitute and steer clear of the saloons. However, the tranquility and monotony of respectable living proved unbearable for Kate. She confessed to Doc that she yearned for the vibrant lights and exhilaration of dance halls and gambling establishments. Consequently, the two parted ways, as they would do countless times throughout Doc's remaining years. Doc resumed his gambling habits, frequenting the Alhambra and dealing cards at the Long Branch Saloon. While the citizens of Dodge City found Wyatt and Doc's friendship peculiar, Wyatt paid no mind to their opinions, and Doc abided by the law during his time in the city. On a fateful night, as Doc dealt faro at the Long Branch Saloon, a group of Texas cowboys arrived with a cattle herd. After enduring weeks on the trail, the rowdy cowboys were eager to unleash their wild spirits. Ed Morrison, who Wyatt had previously humiliated in Wichita, Kansas, and the man named Tubby Driscoll, led the unruly cowboy mob. They stormed through the town, galloping down Front Street with guns blazing, shattering shop windows. Upon entering the Long Branch Saloon, they began harassing the patrons. As Wyatt stepped through the front door, he found himself face to face with several guns pointed at him. Stepping forward, Morrison sneered, "Pray and draw your gun. Your time has arrived, Earp." Abruptly, a voice emanated from behind Morrison. "Nay, comrade, you shall wield or surrender your hands." It was Doc, his revolver pressed against Morrison's temple. Doc had been in the rear chamber, his card game disrupted by the chaos outside. "Should any of you scoundrels brandish a firearm, your esteemed leader shall bid farewell to what remains of his intellect." The cowboys lowered their arms. Wyatt struck Morrison on the head with his lengthy barrel Colt, subsequently disarming both Driscoll and Morrison, and guided them towards the confines of Dodge City Jail. Wyatt never forgot how Doc Holliday saved his life that fateful night in Dodge City. Reflecting on it later, Wyatt remarked, "To grasp the sentiment I held for Doc after the altercation with Driscoll and Morrison, one would have needed to stand in my boots as Doc emerged through the threshold of the Long Branch." In the course of their enduring love-hate relationship, Kate and Doc engaged in another of their frequent tumultuous altercations. Enraged, Doc saddled his horse and departed, eventually finding himself in Trinidad, Colorado. Shortly after his arrival, he was provoked into a confrontation by a young gambler known as Kid Colton. The kid, either seeking renown or unaware of Doc's skill with a gun, ended up lying in the dusty street with 2 bullets in his body. Unwilling to tarry, Doc rode on to Las Vegas, New Mexico, where, In the late summer of 1879, he established his professional services for the final time. However, this endeavor was short-lived, and a few weeks later, he purchased a saloon. In late August 1879, Doc engaged in an argument with a local gunslinger named Mike Gordon. The dispute spilled over to the streets, where Doc courteously invited Gordon to commence shooting at his leisure. Gordon accepted the invitation and met his demise with 3 bullets to his abdomen. Once again, a mob formed with intentions of lynching Holliday, prompting Doc to return to Dodge City. However, upon arrival, he discovered that Wyatt had ventured to a new silver strike in Tombstone, Arizona. Big Nose, Kate, was also nowhere to be found in Dodge City. With nothing to keep him there, Doc ventured westward, destined for Tombstone. Unbeknownst to Doc, Big Nose Kate was also on her way to the newly thriving town of Tombstone, and their paths crossed in Prescott, Arizona. Doc was experiencing a streak of good luck at the gambling tables, accumulating winnings of $40,000, and Kate was content to accompany him. Eventually, in the early summer of 1880, they arrived in Tombstone. Upon his arrival, Doc discovered not only Wyatt but also all of the Earp brothers, including Morgan, who had come from Montana, James, who had traveled with Wyatt from Dodge City, and Virgil from Prescott, where he had recently been appointed Deputy United States Marshal. The Earp brothers were involved in silver mining, with James working as a faro dealer at Vogan's Saloon. Virgil entrusted Wyatt with the role of acting city marshal and enlisted Morgan as an officer. The Earps' presence in Tombstone immediately drew the ire of the outlaw Clanton gang, who had been dominating the region. Old Man Clanton, along with his sons, Ike, Finn, and Billy, the McClory brothers Frank and Tom, Curly Bill Brocious, John Ringo, and their followers wasted no time in expressing their resentment. Holliday's involvement was a welcomed addition to the Earps' battle against the notorious cowboy faction. During this time, Kate managed a boarding house in Globe, Arizona, located approximately 175 miles away from Tombstone. However, she frequently stayed with Doc whenever she visited. In October 1880, Doc found himself in a dispute with a man named Johnny Tyler at the Oriental Saloon. Although Tyler swiftly made his exit, Doc continued arguing with the saloon owner, Milt Joyce. As was often the case, the argument escalated into violence, and in his drunken state, Doc fired multiple shots, injuring Joyce in the hand and hitting his bartender, Parker, in the toe of his left foot. In response, Milt struck Doc on the head with a pistol. Doc was subsequently arrested, charged with assault with a deadly weapon, and found guilty. He was fined $20 for assault and battery, along with $11.25 in court costs. When Kate visited Holliday, their interactions were frequently marked by arguments, most of which were not serious unless Kate had been drinking. Unfortunately, her intoxication often led to abusive behavior. In early 1881, Doc reached his breaking point and decided to finally part ways with her, throwing her out. On the 15th of March in 1881, a quartet of disguised individuals made an attempt to rob a stagecoach in the vicinity of Contention. Tragically, their endeavor resulted in the deaths of both the stage driver and a passenger. Taking immediate advantage of the situation, the cowboy faction swiftly implicated Doc Holliday as one of the assailants involved in the robbery. The sheriff, assigned to investigate the incident, stumbled upon Kate during one of her intoxicated episodes, where she continued to berate Doc for expelling her. Capitalizing on her inebriated state, the sheriff managed to coerce Kate into signing an affidavit affirming that Doc was one of the mass bandits responsible for killing the stage driver. While Kate gradually regained sobriety, the Earps diligently gathered witnesses who could vouch for Doc's whereabouts on the fateful night in question. Upon realizing the gravity of her actions, Kate disowned her statement, leading to the dismissal of the charges against Doc. However, this proved to be the final straw in his relationship with Kate, prompting him to offer her financial assistance and arrange for her departure from the town via stagecoach. Throughout the summer of 1881, the Clantons, also known as the Cowboys, escalated their threats against the Earp brothers. In various taverns, they would boastfully recount tales of how they intended to send Wyatt Earp to his final resting place at Boot Hill. On the evening of Tuesday, the 25th of October, Ike Clanton indulged in a day-long binge of alcohol consumption. frequenting one saloon after another, while openly issuing threats against the Earps and Holliday to anyone who would listen. Later that night, he proceeded to the Occidental Saloon to engage in a card game with Tom McClory. An incensed Doc Holliday, who had been informed of the arrogant boasts, directly confronted him. "I've heard you're planning to end my life, Ike," he declared. "Prepare yourself and draw your weapon." Virgil, a United States Deputy Marshal, Wyatt, appointed as the acting city marshal by Virgil, and Morgan, also an official officer, were all present during this intense encounter. Virgil warned both Doc and Ike that he would arrest them if they persisted in their argument. Despite Clanton's continuous violent threats throughout the day, he was unarmed, and eventually, Virgil managed to separate him from Holliday. However, Clanton persisted, vowing to eliminate you tomorrow when the others arrive in town. When Wyatt encountered Clanton on the streets, who was still seething with anger, Clanton persisted. "Inform your ailing friend, your melodious Arizona troubadour, that he's a dead man tomorrow." To which Wyatt calmly responded, "Don't engage in a confrontation with Doc Holliday. He will end you before you even begin." Ike's parting remark was, "Prepare yourself for a showdown." Wednesday, October 26, 1881. In anticipation of trouble, the Earps rose early. Virgil, observing from his hotel window, witnessed Billy Clanton riding into town alongside his friend Billy Claiborne. They encountered the McClory brothers and Ike Clanton on Allen Street. Ike was in search of Holliday, but before he could find him, Virgil and Morgan intervened. Ike, brandishing a shotgun, exchanged words with the two, but when Clanton raised his rifle, Virgil disarmed him, confiscated his rifle, and brought him before Justice of the Peace Wallace, who imposed a fine of $27.50 on Ike for carrying firearms within the city limits. Upon learning of the incident, Wyatt and Tom McClory coincidentally arrived at the judge's door at the same time, colliding with each other. While Wyatt offered an apology, McClory insulted him, prompting Wyatt to strike McClory's head with his gun in retaliation. Later that morning, the cowboys convened at Spangenberg's, a gunsmith shop. Frank McClory then rode his horse onto the boardwalk, causing pedestrians to scatter, disrupting the area in front of the gunsmith shop. Wyatt seized the horse's reins, leading it away from the street as McClory hurled obscenities. Following this heated altercation, the outlaws retreated around the corner, away from Allen Street. Given the escalating tension, a confrontation was inevitable. Several members of the town's Citizens Committee offered their assistance to the Earp brothers, but Wyatt expressed gratitude and stated that it was their responsibility as law enforcement officers. Then John Behan, the county sheriff, made an appearance and declared, "Ike Clanton and his gang are gathered on Fremont Street, engaged in discussions about firearms." Ike Clanton, along with the two McClorys, Billy Clanton and Billy Claiborne, convened in an empty lot, devising a plan to ambush Doc Holliday, who passed by that route every morning. Virgil, serving as the chief marshal, agreed to intervene and disperse the group, but he insisted that Behan accompany him. Behan simply laughed it off, saying, "This is your battle, not mine." However, the cowboys were taken aback when the Earps unexpectedly arrived, with Doc Holliday in their company. Witnesses recounted that the three Earp brothers were dressed entirely in black, wearing stern, menacing expressions, while Doc sported a stylish gray outfit and was whistling a tune. The two factions eventually crossed paths 90 yards down an alley from the OK Corral. The exchange of gunfire took place off Fremont Street, sandwiched between Fly's Photo Gallery and Jersey's Livery Stable. The Earps bypassed the OK Corral, but opted to take a shortcut through the alley, where they discovered the troublemakers waiting at the other end. "You are being arrested for attempting to disrupt the peace," Virgil declared. As a senior officer, he presented a harmless walking stick, leaving Doc to wield his shotgun. Tension mounted, and Morgan and Doc simultaneously prepared for action. "Wait, I don't want that," exclaimed Virgil. The subsequent events unfolded rapidly, a blur of approximately half a minute. The eruption of gunfire commenced as Billy Clanton and Frank McClory prepared their pistols. The initiator of the first shot remains uncertain, yet it was Doc who struck first, with his bullet finding its mark in Frank McClory's abdomen, causing McClory's own shot to miss Wyatt and instead tear through his coat. In his attempt to retaliate, Billy Clanton aimed at Virgil but misfired when Morgan's bullet pierced his rib cage. Swiftly upon hearing the gunshots, Billy Claiborne made a hasty retreat and vanished from sight. Overwhelmed by panic, Ike Clanton relinquished his firearm, imploring for mercy. "Fight or flee like Claiborne," Wyatt shouted, observing Ike abandon his brother Billy and make a dash towards the entrance of the photography shop. However, Ike secretly drew a concealed weapon, firing a final round in Wyatt's direction before disappearing into the shadows. The noise diverted Morgan's attention long enough for Tom McClory to strike him with a bullet to the side. In an instant response, Doc unleashed a barrage from both barrels of his shotgun, obliterating Tom. Mortally wounded, Billy Clanton blindly discharged shots into the hazy cloud of gun smoke surrounding him, inadvertently hitting Virgil in the leg. Wyatt reacted by unleashing several rounds upon Billy. Then, silence enveloped the scene, prompting the townspeople to emerge from their residences and shops. Wagons were summoned to transport the injured Morgan and Virgil to their respective homes, accompanied by attending physicians. The brief but intense exchange claimed the lives of Billy Clanton, Frank McClory, and Tom McClory. Virgil Earp sustained a leg wound, while Morgan suffered a shoulder injury. As Wyatt stood, still dazed, Sheriff Band materialized, informing him of his impending arrest. Subsequently, the Earps and Doc Holliday faced trial for murder. On January 17, 1882, a purportedly renowned encounter took place involving Wyatt, Doc, and John Ringo. Many authors would claim that John Ringo issued a challenge to the Earp brothers and Holliday. However, this assertion cannot be accurate since Virgil and Morgan were already incapacitated with severe injuries from the shootout. Therefore, while Ringo may have extended the challenge, he faced little risk, knowing that the chances of their acceptance were slim. The Earps were also aware of Ringo's excessive drinking, and it was clear that alcohol was influencing his actions. On March 18, 1882, the cowboy gang struck again, while Morgan Earp was playing pool at Campbell and Hatch's saloon. A gunshot was fired from the darkness of the alley, hitting Morgan in the back. Morgan's body was dressed in one of Doc Holliday's suits and sent to his parents in Colton, California, for burial. 2 days later, the Earp party encountered Frank Stillwell and Ike Clanton at the Tucson Railroad Station, prompting Wyatt to chase Stillwell along the tracks and fill him with bullets. A coroner's jury identified Wyatt and Warren Earp, Doc Holliday, Texas Jack Vermillion, and Sherman McMasters as the men responsible for Stillwell's death, leading to warrants being issued for their arrest. Earp sought revenge against the individuals who shot Virgil and killed Morgan, with the killing of Stillwell being just the initial step, accompanied by Doc Holliday. Wyatt received information that Pete Spence was at his wood camp in the Dragoons, so on March 21, 1882, he and his men swiftly departed, only to find Florentino Cruz instead. The terrified Cruz confessed to being involved in Morgan's murder and named all the other men responsible. Earp and his men riddled Cruz with bullets. The Earp posse set out once again, and on March 24, 1882, they encountered Curly Bill Brocious and 8 of his men near Iron Springs. A gunfight erupted, resulting in Curly Bill's death and a mortal wound for Johnny Barnes. In a little over a year, the Earp posse, together with Doc Holliday, eliminated Old Man Clanton, Billy Clanton, Frank McClory, Tom McClory, Frank Stillwell, Indian Charlie, Dixie Gray, Florentino Cruz, Johnny Barnes, Jim Crane, Harry Head, Bill Leonard, Joe Hill, Luther Kings, and Hank Swilling. Pete Spence surrendered himself to the authorities, seeking refuge within the confines of prison. In May 1882, Wyatt and Doc departed Tombstone, vowing never to return but still harboring a desire for vengeance against Ringo, Clanton, Spence, and Swilling if they were to locate them. They rode their horses to Silver City, New Mexico, where they sold them, then took a stagecoach to Deming and boarded a train bound for Colorado. Shortly after arriving in Denver, Doc was apprehended by a man named Perry Mallon, causing some to speculate that Mallon may have been associated with Johnny Tyler, a known adversary of Holliday who had been driven out of Tombstone. On May 22, 1882, while Doc was incarcerated, the Denver Republican published the following account. Holliday's reputation as a formidable fighter preceded him, and it is believed that he has dispatched more outlaws and cowboys to their graves than any other individual in the Western Territories. He had been a source of terror for the lawless elements in Arizona, and, alongside the Earps, was among the few courageous enough to confront the bloodthirsty gang that has tainted the name of Arizona in the eyes of decent society. Mallon, speaking to the newspaper, claimed to have been present when Curly Bill Brocious met his demise. Doc recounted his recollections. 8 bandits suddenly emerged from behind the bank, unleashing a hail of 35 to 40 bullets in our direction. It was nothing short of a miracle that we managed to escape. The shots tore through our garments and saddles, claiming the life of a horse, but miraculously sparing us. I am convinced that we would not have survived if it weren't for divine intervention. Wyatt Earp unleashed a shotgun blast that felled Curly Bill. The 8 men in the gang that attacked us were all outlaws, each with a substantial reward on their heads. If Mallon indeed stood alongside Curly Bill when he was killed, he was in the company of one of the most notorious bands of murderers and thieves in the region. Eventually, Doc's legal predicament concerning extradition to Arizona was resolved. On May 30, 1882, the Rocky Mountain News reported, Governor Pitkin has made the final decision in Doc Holliday's case, declining to honor the extradition request from Arizona. The district attorney's office was represented by the Honorable Isaac Elbert Barnum, Assistant District Attorney, who visited the governor accompanied by Deputy Sheriff Linton and Sheriff Paul from Arizona. Present at the meeting were also Deputy Sheriff Masterson from Trinidad and several acquaintances of Holliday. Doc departed Denver, purportedly heading towards Pueblo, Colorado. However, on July 14, 1882, while Doc Holliday was supposedly still in Colorado, a teamster named John Yost in Arizona Territory stumbled upon a lifeless body entwined among the branches of an oak tree east of the Dragoon Mountains. A bullet had entered the right temple and exited through the crown of the head. The deceased turned out to be John Ringo, a sworn enemy of Doc Holliday. Despite Bat Masterson, Warren Earp, and some newspaper associates attempting to provide an alibi by claiming that Doc had never left Colorado, the truth was that Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday had returned to Arizona. During their time there, they reunited with friends such as Fred Dodge, Oregon Smith, Johnny Green, John Meager, and possibly Luke Cooley. This group encountered Ringo, and shortly thereafter, he was found lifeless. Doc then journeyed to Leadville, where he embraced a serene and uneventful existence until the afternoon of August 19, 1884. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Doc found himself in Hyman's saloon, and upon Billy Allen's entrance, knowing that Allen was seeking trouble, Doc aimed his firearm, propelling a bullet just above Allen's head, narrowly avoiding contact. Allen, in his attempt to escape, stumbled over the threshold, tumbling forward and landing on all fours. Extending over the tobacco counter, Doc fired once more, striking Allen in the right arm. Holliday would have fired again, but the bartender swiftly approached from behind, firmly restraining his gun hand. In a subsequent news report published in the Leadville Daily Democrat on August 26, 1884, it stated, among other things, the following: the general public sentiment, unrelated to the law, largely favors Holliday. The more respectable members of the community not only acknowledge this, but also refrain from criticizing his actions in relation to his altercation with Allen. Despite his popularity, Holliday faced an extensive legal process, but on March 28, 1885, a jury declared him not guilty of the shooting or attempted murder charges. The Leadville courthouse still preserves records of the infamous gunfighter and gambler Doc Holliday's arrests. During the last week of October 1885, there was a brief surge of activity as rumors circulated about further conflicts involving firearms. However, the Leadville police vigilantly monitored the presence of concealed weapons, ensuring that no violence ensued. With the arrival of winter in 1885, Holliday, apprehensive about contracting pneumonia in the high-altitude city, relocated to Denver. Although his condition did not improve there, he had the opportunity to reunite with his old friend Wyatt Earp in late winter 1886, when they rendezvoused in the lobby of the Windsor Hotel. Sadie Marcus described the emaciated Holliday as constantly coughing and standing on unsteady legs. Holliday's health steadily declined. Being a realist, Doc did not harbor beliefs in miraculous cures. But he held on to the hope that the Yampa hot springs and sulfur vapors might alleviate his ailments. Thus, in May 1887, he made his way to Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Checking in at the prestigious Hotel Glenwood, his condition worsened over time, and he spent his final 57 days confined to a bed in the hotel, experiencing delirium for 14 of them. On November 8, 1887, he awoke with clarity in his eyes and requested a glass of whiskey. It was provided, and he savored it as he drank it down. Then, as he glanced at his bare feet, he remarked, "This is quite amusing," before passing away. Throughout his life, he had always imagined meeting his demise with his boots on. Doc Holliday had ventured into the western frontier years ago, fully aware that his time was limited. The notion of passing away peacefully in bed never crossed his mind. He frequently predicted that his demise would be a result of lead poisoning, the tightening grip of a rope, a blade piercing his ribs, or perhaps the consequences of excessive drinking. His obituary, published on November 14, 1887, in the Leadville Carbonate Chronicle, contained the following account. Hardly anyone in the region achieved greater notoriety than Doc Holliday, renowned for his unwavering fearlessness on the frontier. His unyielding loyalty to his companions during the most perilous trials earned him profound respect. It was this exceptional quality, above all others, that garnered the admiration of a substantial circle of individuals, always ready to come to his aid at a moment's notice. Perched atop a steep hill, the Glenwood Springs Cemetery overlooks the valley below. However, due to treacherous icy conditions at the time of his passing, he was laid to rest at the hill's base with the intention of relocating his remains once the ice thawed. Yet, the relocation never occurred. Many years later, a housing development took shape at the foot of the hill, and although a memorial marker stands in the cemetery, his actual resting place is likely nestled within someone's backyard. According to Doc Holliday himself, he narrowly escaped death on a total of 9 occasions. 4 attempts were made to hang him, while he endured being shot 5 times. The exact number of men Holliday killed remains shrouded in uncertainty.